Hello, my name is Shiyu. I am a Basis International School Guangzhou senior, and the paper that I'm going to talk about today is called Exploring Reasons for Japan's Post-War Political Stagnation. In this presentation, I will first provide an overview of Japan's political status quo, and I'll explain the symptoms of Japan going to a political stagnation, and I'll discuss the reasons of Japan falling into a political stagnation. And at last, I will discuss the significance of the findings. As many of us know, the currently ruling party of Japan is called the Liberal Democratic Party. The current prime minister is Mr. Kishida Fumio, and the system Japan currently adopts is parliamentary constitutional monarchy. The head of government is the prime minister elected via the House. It all begins with the system of 1955 when the LDP dominance starts back then. At the point, the opposition mainly comes from the Socialist Party of Japan, which has half of the seats as the LDP. The system officially ends in 1993 when Hosokawa Morihiro became the Prime Minister of Japan. And as for the symptoms of Japan going into a political stagnation, it all goes back to the Cold War when Japan, after its devastation, is going through a economic transition. Japan's economy transitioned from corporatism to free market capitalism. And in the context of the Cold War, Japan serves as a frontier or an ally of the United States, which means that the left is oftentimes oppressed and divided. However, prominent leftist movements that's does do have an impact. For instance, the struggle for safety procedures led to the downfall of the Kishi cabinet. And obviously, we have to mention the notorious bubble economy. The Plaza Accord signed in 1985 deprecates the American currency and depreciates the American currency and appreciates the Japanese currency, which severed the economic bubble of Japan and accelerated its collapse. Previously, the voters of Japan trying to escort to other parties, such as the Democratic Party of Japan. However, the DPJ failed the voters and failed the people. In 2008, the LDP was punished by the voters under the context of the global financial storm. And as an alternative, the DPJ was elected. However, in 2011, Japan suffered from a huge earthquake. The people needed the government the most. However, the DPJ government is entrenched with internal quarrels. As a consequence, voters went go back to the LDP since they are likely to be more reliable in this situation. So in the end, Japan is now going through economic stagnation ever since the bubble had collapsed. Hedonism among the society since the economic bubble of late 20th century, and heavy United States influence both economically and politically. As a result, there's lack of social and systemic reform under a conservative majority in the House. When former opposition became the government, they lack experience. For instance, the aforementioned DPJ. And we'll talk about the reasons of Japan's political stagnation in relation to some of the famous thinkers. For instance, Max Weber, who coined the term disenchantment under a political context. In a sense, Japan's current situation relates to disenchantment, as the voters are very apathetic. In the younger generation, the voting rate could go down to below 10%. Max Weber suggested that plebiscitary democracy could re-inject charisma, which is a thing likely to be lacking in the modern world, back to politics. However, it seems to not reflect Weber's wishes very well, since the Japanese parliaments are being bureaucratizing. That being said, there are some charismatic leaders in Japan's political history. For instance, Koizumi Junichiro and Abe Shinzo. The former one promised a lot of reforms. The later one promised to take back Japan from the DPJ. However, as Weber had predicted, charismatic authority did not last long. Koizumi Junichiro failed to reform the whole system, and the postal system reform he proposed does not do as much as some may predict. And Abe Shinzo, he did help the LDP to take back Japan's regime. However, in his term, in his second term, he did not give Japan a significant economic development. And perception, reality, and the lack of actual changes. New oligopolies are easy to form under little market regulations. So they become economically, thus politically, very powerful. And although after 2012, the regime is back to the hands of the LDP, Abe Shinzo did not revive the economy of Japan. From 2012 to 2019, the GDP growth of Japan just fluctuates between 0%. And alas, lack of actual changes. Reorganizing the economical and political structure will be the last thing a conservative leaning political party, the LDP, wants to do. And in a sense, Japan's current situation relates to disciplinary power and soul making, which Michel Foucault has mentioned. The power-knowledge relation could be seen in the popularization of Nihon Jinrong, literally on being Japanese, which serves as a justification for the current system. Under the context of the bubble economy of Japan, the system is proven to be a success, which could be used for justification to the nation state, to the current system. And uh, about disciplinary power, we all know there's peer pressure. The cookie literally means atmosphere. Although social political atmosphere is not exclusive to Japan, the special thing about cookie in Japan is that it compensates for a relatively weak government after war. For instance, during the COVID pandemic in 2021, the government quote unquote kindly requests citizens to stay home during the pandemic. Although the actual rules might be more lenient, there's those spontaneous actions called the Jisutsuke which literally means self-restraint police, uh, uses somewhat violent measures to force people to stay home, although actual regulations could be more lenient. So in terms of discussions, conservatism hard makes implementing and prolonging actual changes harder. It also compresses discursive spaces. Uh, Free market capitalism, loosely regulated market favor the established oligarchs. It gives them more economic and political power. And alas, traditionalism, emphasis on seniority and traditional East Asian order mutes the voice of younger generations. So alas, stressing traditional values too much will make social reformation too unlikely to happen. Political apathy of the youth jeopardizes the political future of the state. Therefore, the youth should be more seen and heard. In addition, mega corporations should never be overpowered. These are my references, and thank you for listening.